Welcome to Becoming is Messy, where we dive deep into the journey of survival, transformation, and everything in between. I'm your host, Meghann Dawson, here to share the honest, unfiltered stories behind my own process of becoming. Life isn't a pretty and perfect straight line, and neither is becoming the person we're meant to be. Here, we embrace the ups, the downs, and all the beautiful, chaotic, messy moments that shape who we are. Whether you're in the thick of change or reflecting on past transformations, this space is for real conversations about what it means to grow, stumble, and rise again. So get comfy, settle in, and let's get messy.
Each conversation connects in some way to the unperfect.
Hello, Messies, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming is Messy, the podcast where we explore the real stories behind personal growth, transformation, and the winding paths that shape who we become. Each conversation connects in some way to the Unperfect Level Up framework, which is a model for becoming more fully ourselves. Today's episode connects to the L in Level Up, let your inner voice lead. This stage of the journey is about noticing the places where we've been following scripts we never consciously chose. And one of the biggest scripts most of us inherit without questioning is the one around money. Work hard, put money in a retirement account, trust the market, hope everything works out decades from now. But sometimes growth begins when we pause and ask a different question. Is this actually the most empowering path available to me? That curiosity is exactly where today's conversation lives. Today's guest is Mark Willis. Mark is a certified financial planner, 3-time #1 bestselling author, and the owner of Weight Growth Financial Services in Chicago. He's also the host of the Not Your Average Financial podcast, where he helps people rethink how they approach money, debt, and long-term financial security. After graduating with 6 figures of student loan debt, which I'm sure many of us can unfortunately relate to, and after Mark witnessed the financial devastation many families experienced during the 2008 crisis, which also many of us unfortunately witnessed as well, Mark became committed to helping people build wealth in ways that are predictable, tax efficient, and less dependent on Wall Street. Today, he helps clients design strategies that allow them to become their own source of financing, grow wealth more intentionally, and create income streams they won't outlive. Mark, I am excited to have this conversation. Welcome to Becoming is Messy.
Thank you, Meghann. So glad to be here.
Happy to have you. So help us set the stage. I mentioned a few of your twists and turns. Let us know a little bit just about this current season that you're in personally. What is this season in your life looking like for you right now?
I love the idea of messy because we've just had a little baby, a #2 baby, and she is anything but clean. They say clean is a newborn baby, but I think that's kind of a misnomer. But she is making a mess all the time. It's a beautiful hot mess all the time, and we're so glad to have her. But it's a reminder that someone once told me to do it ugly first, being okay with failing forward and being sort of okay with the mess. And that's exactly where the success is. If you can dig through the mess, you can usually find the gold and find where you're trying to go. So where we are now, my company is almost 13 years into this wonderful project of helping people have more certainty, more agency, more capacity for agency and directive in their personal financial life. And you said it so well, so many people do not have that sense of certainty or control or this directive that they're moving in a direction that they chose. They oftentimes tell me they feel like almost like a tennis ball floating down the gutter of the economy or the gutter of their life. And, everyone else is kind of taking a piece off their back before they can keep theirs. Their hard-earned money maybe is handed out to 15 people before they even get home. I'm talking about the grocery store, but I'm also talking about Gucci or the kids' sports league or, the rent or the mortgage. The list goes on and on and on. I've told others that if you don't have a financial plan for your money, everyone else will have a financial plan for your money. So giving yourself to that project to say, you know what, I earned it. I ought to be able to find a way to keep it and do what it tells me to do. Do what it tells me to do, meaning let the financial planners get out of my life so I can do what I want to do with my own money. That's sort of our main focus for our clients. And we have wonderfully several hundred clients all around the United States and Canada and beyond. And all of them have made a choice to swim upstream, to think differently about their money, economy, future. And it's been a privilege to get to serve them and all the wonderful, counterintuitive, not so average ways that we get to do at our firm.
Love how you described that. I made the choice myself about a year ago to swim upstream in a lot of ways in my job and how I serve the world. But then a big part of that is my finances. And so I'm very excited to dig into that topic today. Before we really dig in there, walk us back a little bit. I mentioned a couple of the highlight reels from your past in the last 2 decades or so, but take us back even further. Every becoming story has its own messy path. Walk us through just a few of the twists and turns that led you to the work that you're doing today and just where you are in your life.
Sure, no problem. I'll start with a messy story. How about that? We
Yes.
graduated from college in the midst of the Great Recession. You mentioned that on the top there. My first job after moving to Chicago, after getting my fancy degrees, my graduate level degrees, I felt so smart and better than that, holier than thou, and all that stuff that comes with getting your big fancy degrees from this nice university. And then I had no job and no one was hiring. And I had a student loan company that felt like a second spouse that had moved into our second bedroom. My wife jokingly says I married two women in college, my wife, a wonderful wife, and then Sally Mae. And we did not want her in the relationship.
That's
So
so true.
I had to get a couple extra side jobs. And the first day on one of these side jobs at a property management company, I was handed a shop vac and I was told to crawl under this broken elevator. So here I go, under the elevator to get out whatever was under this broken elevator. Suck it all out. So tug, and I'm knee deep in muck, basically. And that was the ego busting moment of my early career, and reminding myself that no matter what you think you know, it's what you can do to serve others that matters when it comes to your financial life. So if I'm going to do anything to make a buck that day, it's going to be serving my boss at the property management company and shovel snow and punch nails through drywall and whatever he wants me to do to help me cover that student loan payment. The second lesson I learned that very important first day is I was in debt, and that was like a form of slavery. I felt like I was not in control of my own time, and time is money, as they say. So I did feel like a good chunk of my day, I was just working to pay the debts of my past. And it's true. It's the borrower is slave to the lender, as they say. So I had to figure out very quickly, how can I get out from under this slavery? And how can I do something that makes me feel like I'm in control of my own life? That was a scary, dangerous, sort of depressing season for my wife and I. But slowly and surely, we stumbled across some pretty powerful tools and strategies and approaches that flipped the idea of debt upside down. We went from hating debt, wishing it was always a bad thing, to not just liking debt, but owning it. Like, how do we become our own banker? How could we not just get rid of the problem of debt, but turn it into the solution? That's what got me very excited. Like, okay, it's like financial jujitsu a little bit here. I can take the problem of debt and turn it into the very thing that I need to solve for myself. The very problem is the solution. Look at it from another angle. So we got really interested in, how do banks work? And why do they care so much about handing out debt? Like, they're very interested in loaning me money. There's a Mark Twain quote. It's, a banker is a fellow who will lend you his umbrella when the sun shines, but wants it back as soon as it starts to rain. And that always caught me as an interesting quote, but it was also interesting that that was the main product that banks sell. If you think about it, you go to the hardware store, they sell nails and hammers, and you go to the grocery store and they're selling apples and steak or whatever. Well, when you go to the bank, what is the product on their shelf? It's not a savings account. Although you might think that. The savings account is the sweetener to get you to their products where they make all the money, and that's the debt. It's the mortgages, the credit cards, the bank loans, the personal loans, the business loans. Debt is actually the number one tool that banks use to become, and this is really important, the most profitable business industry in the entire world for all of human history. There's a really cool book out there by David Graeber. The book is Debt, the First 5,000 Years.
Yeah.
It
Oh
just
my
reminds
gosh.
me that debt is so core to the human experience. It's as
Yeah.
old as marriage. It's as old as cave paintings. It's as old as
Mhm.
you name it, right? It's as old as civilization itself. So my wife and I really started thinking, okay, if we're going to not just scratch our way through life, but we're going to take this thing called life by the horns, financially speaking and otherwise, how can we turn this thing called debt, which has been the boogeyman in our financial life, and turn it into the stallion that can pull us forward to where we want to go in our life? That's sort of where we started, and that's kind of where we are now today.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I mentioned that you watched the 2008 financial crisis unfold, so appreciate the personal context. And oh my gosh, the whole idea of kind of that ego death, I think is so critical to find places on your journey to have those kinds of experiences. There's so much to learn there. Now just thinking of your viewing of a collective experience and how seeing so many people lose their retirement and their home equities and how that experience kind of helped also contribute to the reshaping of your own philosophy about financial strategy.
It was a death-defying experience. We had several part-time jobs, as I mentioned, my wife and I, and one was that property management business. But my main gig, you might say, during those early years was working for a CPA firm. And I got to overhear her make those dreaded phone calls. She did some taxes, of course, but she also managed people's portfolios. And she made the phone call. And I got to nationally recognized CPA, smart woman, incredible woman. I look up to her still today, but she would make the call. I'm sorry, Mr. Client. I know you're 64 years old. I know you're about to retire, but I just lost you a third of your life savings. A third or a half. I couldn't handle that kind of stuff. I was about to leave the industry of financial industry and just said, all right, I'm out. I can't do that to a human being. That's awful. And right or wrong, right? The CPA wasn't in control of who was sneezing the wrong way on Wall Street or who Bear Stearns was taken out today and tomorrow was going to be Lehman Brothers and the rest. She had no control. And that's the whole point. I don't know what the market might be doing when you're watching or listening to this show. It might be flying high. It might be in the tank. And that's the point. Nobody, not even a certified financial planner, knows what's about to happen. We'll try to sound like we're really smart, but pull back the Wizard of Oz curtain and we're just as clueless as the rest. We can make our guesses, but like the weatherman, it's going to be rainy or snowy or who knows. Sometimes the guess is worth about as much as the paper you printed it on. And so, when it came to overhearing those calls, I said to my wife and I said to myself, I can't do this the way I'm seeing it done. I have to either leave the business entirely or start a business that I just where I discuss financial tools and strategies that have nothing to do with, again, something that happens on Wall Street, which might be a lifetime away or thousands of miles away or just beyond the average American. I wanted to find something that they would know, understand, and be able to use in their day-to-day life. And I feel like we found that with our firm.
This is so incredible. I find that, I talk to folks on the podcast like yourself in all different industries and areas of focus, but there is a common thread of people rising up right now to look at the different systems that they're a part of and bringing in a human angle that hasn't been part of those. So for you, those early days as you were shaping that new philosophy for yourself and your wife, and maybe this was in parallel with you building the business. I can tell you when I launched my business a year ago, my personal growth was very aligned to the business. So it might have been happening at the same time. But just curious of what was that shift? What was some of the main parts of the new philosophy that you were forming?
Well, I'll say that much of it had to do with where we wanted our money to go, had more to do with what we wanted it to act like. And that sounds kind of weird. So let me kind of explain what I mean. Where you put your money makes it do different things. So where you put your money makes it do different things. What I mean by that is the CD at the bank is going to be different than a hedge fund or a rental property or an annuity or something like that. Where you put the money actually has different attributes or characteristics. So when it came time to sort of aligning our business with our values, we started asking, well, what do we want our money doing for us? Like let's just make our wish list happen here, where we put a list in and write it up and prioritize it if we can. What are the characteristics? If we could paint with a magic brush, if we were Pope of money for the day, what are the characteristics we'd want to have our money doing for us? And we just started writing it down. And we didn't care if it sounded totally outlandish. We just wanted to make our wish list first. We wanted to start with adjectives and verbs and leave the nouns for later. Nouns would be like 401k, stock market, bank, savings account, cryptocurrency, although that didn't really exist back then. But you get the picture. You kind of create your list of nouns, set those aside for a minute, start with adjectives and verbs. So that's where we started. And it's a fun thought experiment, and it's free, by the way. Everybody for free can grab a notepad and just start writing their wish list down. So it'd be a fun experiment if you want, Meghann,
Yes.
for this show, if you want.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things, if we could just come up with 5 to 10 characteristics for you, Meghann, if you'd be
Yeah.
willing, what would you want your money doing for you if you could just paint with that magic brush? Give me a
Yeah,
few.
well-
I'll start with one just to kind of get the gears turning.
Yeah, please go for it.
How about, like, again, adjectives would be, or verbs would be, grows competitively. So keeps up with inflation would be one.
Yes, yes.
So I got to keep up with inflation. That's maybe number one. I'll toss the tennis ball over to you.
Yeah, mine is maintains peace of mind.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's
Yep,
great.
yep,
Yeah. So
yep.
say
I
some more
shared
about
with
that. What's
Mark.
important about that?
I shared with Mark, as we were starting, that really for me, my guiding principles are peace and freedom for myself. I very much believe in wholeness first, and so peace and freedom for myself. And then the work that I'm doing is very much intended to help people also maximize their lives, to be able to find that peace and freedom within their own lives. And this topic is so critical for that. For me, the freedom, so the peace of mind comes first for me. I think that's my
good.
top value. But then also next would really be the freedom, I want my money to be able to provide me freedom to live the life that I want to live, that is therefore peaceful, all connected to that. I also want the same for my kids, to have the money that I have, whether or not it's my total wealth or it's just the philosophies we're talking today. I just very much want the same peace and freedom for my children and the ways they approach life. We have a freshman in college, we have a senior about to be a freshman in college, and a junior who will be a freshman in college in a few years, just right at that precipice. And a big goal of mine is to be able to set them on a path where they don't have fear in regard to money, but instead have ownership of the choices they make in regard to it.
I like that. Peace, freedom, and I heard you say ownership.
Choice
I think that's
and ownership.
choice.
I think peace, freedom, choice, ownership, and a little bit of luxury, a little bit of. So I guess that kind of ties to the freedom, but I feel like a bit of that small luxury is also part of my kind of 5-frame vision.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from our clients. Those are very similar in theme to what I hear them say. They want predictability, freedom, agency, choice. They want productive growth. They often say, well, Mark, that includes tax-free access to the money. When they think about freedom, they don't want other people like the government or whoever deciding how much of your 401k is yours versus theirs, for example.
Yes.
So there I go using a noun, but that's a key thing, right? So many people believe that when they put money into their 401k that they're getting a tax break. And it's just not true. You are deferring a tax, but you're not getting a tax break. You're pushing it out. You're postponing the tax. Ooh, that's got a bad connotation to it. Tax deferred sounds smart and savvy. Tax postponed sounds kind of dangerous. I don't want to postpone my root canal, That'll just make the problem worse. So we have to ask ourselves second order consequence for our decisions. When I put my money into a 401k and I also think I want freedom and peace of mind, well, we've broken those two rules already, right? The stock market brings anything but peace of mind. And there's not as much freedom, at least not for the contributor of the 401k. The government has the freedom to choose how much it'll tax you on when you go to take the money out, right? Because it will be taxed. It's just on the way out.
Exactly.
When tax rates might be higher, depending on where the world takes us. So what we start with, adjectives and verbs, helps lead us to the nouns, savings account, 401k, whatever, rental properties, annuities, whatever, cryptocurrencies. The list goes on, but it helps the listener, or you and me, to know for sure that we're getting our plan implemented, not some financial advisor who would love to charge you a fee on your account. So don't listen for other people's financial plans. Figure out what you want first, and then go look for the people who are ready to set that up for you.
I love this. I just keep thinking of, as you're talking, just thinking that in some ways we have choice because we have a 401k. We don't have to contribute as much to it. We could have a little bit more cash flow. We have a little bit of choice on, how we handle our taxes and whether or not we get more in our paycheck or more of a return. And, we have these little levers to pull. But at the end of the day, it's just so narrow. And
Right.
so very curious now hearing from you and the work you're doing, help us connect the dot then to some of the how you're helping folks rethink some of that. What are some of the kind of specifics that you move people from that kind of pie in the sky, I want freedom, to really what are some of the solutions that could get them there?
Yeah, you're right. There has to be a ladder from the clouds to the ground, and I totally agree. You need the mindset that says, I choose freedom. I want choice. I want peace of mind. I want control, the things that we've been talking about. But we also need tactics and strategies and financial tools that are legal, and available here in your area. So I start with the mindset first, and I think we've agreed that's like got to be the first thing. But then we need to apply that desire into real life tangible tools and tactics. And so I definitely don't know everybody listening. Everyone's financial life is going to be different. As a certified financial planner, I got to say stuff like that. It depends is my favorite answer to most
Yep.
questions. So I always do a one-on-one meeting with folks, several meetings to really get to know them better before we jump to any conclusions. But let me give you a sneak peek into some of the tools that have been most helpful for folks looking for the things you've shared today and what I hear a lot of our clients say they want too. This is going to sound weird. Our show is called Not Your Average Financial Podcast for a reason. It's not so average. It's pretty weird, but it's also time tested. There's a financial tool that's been around a little over 200 years. It's really, honestly, it kind of predates the U.S. Constitution, although it's around the same time. And on the last several hundred years, I've been struck as I've researched this tool, how it grows on a predictable basis every single year, regardless of the stock market, regardless of the bond market. It grows predictably and it beats inflation. And we have liquid access to the money for anything we want on any timeline. I mean, you don't have to be some special age to get the money like you would a 401k or an IRA. You get the money, it's your money right away. You're able to get that money if it's designed properly, with no taxes due. Today's tax law says you can get the money out totally tax-free. And I'm talking about, of all things in the financial universe, a specially formed type of insurance contract, something called dividend-paying whole life insurance, of all things. Now, as a CFP, I never thought that would be even on my radar. When you first get into your CFP nesting, as you're getting into the world of financial literacy, which, I just stumbled into as an adult. I was definitely not born into this world as a kid. Grew up kind of on the bleeding side of the working poor. As I stumbled across this tool, though, I could not look away from it. Again, it grows guaranteed every single year. We have liquid access to the money, meaning we can get the money out whenever we want for whatever we want by answering just one question: how much do you want? And that's it. That's so cool. And also, it has an insurance component. So for our kids and grandkids and whatever, it does provide a legacy for them. But most interestingly, it allows me and allows my clients to become our own banker. In essence, we become our own source of financing. You can borrow against these life insurance policies as if it's a line of credit you've built for yourself. So again, go back to my student loan problem. I had all this debt and I didn't know what to do with it. And I could have just paid off the debt, throw money at the debt, and I would have been 4 or 5 years older, and I'd have been 5 years closer to retirement, and I would have had zero earning for my retirement. I would have had, my student loans would have all been paid off, but I would have been basically starting at zero half a decade older. I didn't like that idea. So I found a way to use these weird whole life policies to fund the whole life policy, build up wealth inside the contract, and then with a simple phone call, or now we can just go online and request it, you can request a loan against your life insurance policy and then borrow that money to wipe out your debts. You can use it to wipe out your debts, but you can also use it to buy your car, to pay for a medical expense, to invest in your business. Really, whatever you can come up with, it's your money. There's no limitation. So is it a cure-all? No, definitely not. We can talk about the pros and the cons, but it, for me, aligned with my values of certainty, control, agency. We call it bank on yourself designed policies because, I didn't want to bank on the government or bank on Wall Street to come through for me. They are not my knight in shining armor by any means. So this was a way for my wife and I to become our own source of financing and take back control of our finances and our financial future.
Incredible. It's, pretty ironic, and I'll be fully transparent as I stepped away from the corporate paycheck a year ago, and my husband Kelly has been really helpful in allowing me to do that and picking up extra shifts here and there. He now bartends a couple nights a week, really as our family believing so much in the business.
It's great.
There is a cost to that and coming up with strategies to be able to fund the life we want that is different than our corporate world. And right now, one of our levers we haven't pulled yet, but that's brought us peace of mind, has been our whole life policy money that it's built up in there. And so just for us, just knowing that money is there, if we ever did have to tap into that for part of what we're building, that has definitely checked off that box of peace of mind for us.
Great. It's great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so it's awesome you brought that up. But then my question would be then, so I'll go to my freedom one. So I feel like that gives me peace of mind. Now, if we think about freedom for a bit and continuing to be free. And so what about some thoughts on the long-term implications of that?
Yep.
And then, what are some thoughts on solutions then for how we do plan for and bucket and store money for some of those longer-term needs like retirement?
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I've got a couple answers. I'll try to be as brief as I can be. Feel free to interrupt if you want to go a different direction. So these whole life policies, let's start there, but then there's more. Okay, so we'll call them bank on yourself designed because there's old-fashioned whole life that most people have heard about that are heavy on commissions, big death benefit, very small cash values, especially in the first few years. If it's designed properly, we can flip all that upside down where we cut the commissions by about 70%, build like somewhere between 8 and 40 times more cash value building up right away, giving you that peace of mind today should you need to start a business or if you lost your job or if there was a medical need or whatever. My wife and I have used our policies for all those things, by the way. It helps in the here and now. When you borrow against these policies for anything, the policy, if it's designed properly, not all companies do this, but if you borrow from these policies, it will continue to compound toward your retirement on the entire cash value, even on the amount you borrowed.
Yeah.
So give a case study. Let's say you had $50,000 of cash value in your policy. That's what they call the money you can grab today, cash value. You have $50,000 in there. Let's say you needed a new car for $40,000. So you go online, request $40,000. It takes about 2 minutes to request the money and about 3 or 4 days for it to hit your bank account. So you've borrowed against your life insurance. The cash value is still growing on the full $50,000, even though you've accessed 40 to go buy yourself a car. By the way, you should do that through your business and get the tax deductions and write-offs, but that's another conversation. So what we just did there was we took $1 and we made it do 2 different jobs at once. It's earning for my retirement days and it's in the wheels of my car moving me around town. That's incredible. Uninterrupted compounding growth is the 8th wonder of the financial world. Okay, so now let's fast forward. At the time of retirement, your $50,000 might be, pick your number, because there's not enough information to give you the total story here, but let's say it's grown to $2 million in your cash value. That's very likely for a lot of the clients that I work with. So your $50,000 has now grown to $2 million of tax-free, liquid, accessible money. could that help your retirement? I bet it could.
I think it would.
And because we're not dealing with the stock market means volatility. And volatility means we have to really watch our withdrawal rate. So this is going to recent studies by PhD economists like Dr. Wade Pfau, Dr. Roger Ibbotson, Dr. David Blanchett. They're all retirement researchers. And they say if you have a bowl full of money in the stock market, you can pull out about 3% of your money each year. That's what they say. But with whole life insurance, you can pull about 5 to 6% of your money out every year, again, with no taxes or market volatility included. So if you had $2 million of cash value in your policy at 65 years old, let's do the math on that. That's about $110,000 a year with no taxes due under current law, of course. But that'll last the rest of your life. That's a pretty nifty stream of income to help you with retirement. So for a lot of our clients, that has replaced their 401k, or at least supplemented what they're doing maybe at their day job. So, I find these to be supplemental. They don't have to be replacing everything. But boy, oh boy, if it's designed properly and you've got that kind of a bowl full of money, it sure gives you another lever to pull when it comes time for freedom in the future as well.
Fantastic. Well, I have two other questions in this section. The first one is, if you had endless money with all that you've worked on, the families you've worked with, the products you're working with currently, if you had an endless budget for product design and could launch a new product, is there, give us some features that you envision a product that could really kind of take this need and blow it out of the water and help us all do this even more?
So are you asking to create a brand new financial product, or more
Yeah,
like a educational tool that gets people the
either.
information they need?
You have the
Yeah.
floor, so wherever your
I
gut takes you on that.
All right, cool. I
What
like
gets
the
us there?
question.
What gets us there? That we
Yeah.
don't have that you don't have access to today. What would help us meet this
Megan,
need on a broader scale?
I love your blue ocean question. It's a great one. Here's just some ideas. I think we have enough information out there. We have enough shows, books, financial gurus, courses. If I had limitless resources, I would find enough people with good hearts that could hold hands of the people that they're trying to guide through the financial storms of life, and actually apply what we've learned and align it with the person's values. So I really believe that you are your last and best financial guru. There's no financial radio host, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman. There's no podcast host. That would be me too. Nobody, not even me, knows exactly what you should be doing with your money as well as you do. The only trouble is sometimes we have some missing or wrong information that we've been taught. One of my favorite questions to ask clients is, who taught you that? Not in a mean way, but kind of a let's peel back the onion sort of way. When they say to me, Mark, I've always been bad with money. Okay, that's interesting. I'm curious, who taught you that? Who taught you that you've always been bad with money, or you've always been unlucky in the stock market or whatever? So that's our first, I think, just to have an army of heart-forward financial coaches that can not only give you the right information and dispel myth, but also implement the plan that you desperately need and also aligns with your values. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know how to make that happen per se, but we're trying at our firm and with several other colleagues that I work with around the country.
Wonderful. So much of your philosophy that you're sharing around finances to me is topics we're talking about holistically in all areas of our lives, and learning that we are the expert on our own destiny, but then the lessons we learn along the way on that journey are very helpful across the collective. And the more we share, the more we help others tap into their own expertise on their own journey. So very much resonating with that. The last question was just really thinking back to the families that you've been working with along your journey as you've evolved this philosophy, and just some of the shifts you've seen collectively as folks shift their mindset away from maybe what we've traditionally done to some of the new things we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's a lot of fun. I was just reading through some of the reviews that we've gotten, and hats off to my team to help make so many of our clients' lives so much better and happier. Lives changed, messy divorce, job loss, death in the family, these things happen. We get curveballs, and our clients, I've seen it all now. I feel like, we've been around the block enough with, a couple thousand clients and hundreds of thousands of people that are touched by these strategies around the country. So we get to hear the stories, and it's sort of humbling to think about, all right, we've helped in some small way give people the desires of their heart in a way that doesn't, outsource their financial agency to other entities. To me, I feel like that's the number one thing I want to be able to put on my gravestone, you might say, is he reached his potential. He helped people live the life that they were given the chance to live. The great gift that we all have, this thing called life, for however long we have it. Oh, I just think that, and I'm not just trying to be superficial here. I think that's one of the most rewarding things one can do with their short time on earth. But if we have the skill, knowledge, and courage to put it in place, that's just what gets me out of bed in the morning. It gives me goosebumps. I love that sort of thing. So thinking back to some of the families that we've been working with, it is fun to see people who think, okay, credit cards are my default option when it's time to go on the vacation or send the kid to college. That's another one, because kids' college, we think it's default, at least I did, to go get a bunch of student loan debt. Or put it all in college savings accounts or 529 plans or Coverdell accounts. And I don't know if you knew this, you might know this, maybe some of your listeners might not, but the more you put into a college savings account, like a 529 plan, the bigger a target is on your back when it comes to financial aid at the university. So the more you put in that college account, the less they'll get in financial aid. However, these whole life policies I mentioned earlier, they don't show up on the financial aid formulas. So you might have $1 million in one of these policies and look totally poor on paper and be given all the need-based or merit-based scholarships that your kid is entitled to. Meanwhile, if I'd plowed a bunch of money into a college account, I'm going to be paying full price for that same college. So things like that, giving someone the right tools and then the right mindset. Most of the time, I think they need to check out your podcast and subscribe to really get that mindset figured out and to realize, okay, it's not an overnight success. It might take time to transform from caterpillar to butterfly. But that's kind of what's getting me excited is seeing those little aha moments take place and then them putting that aha into practice.
Well, thank you for that. It's been so rewarding because I do find that as people go through the journey to look at their whole life, heal the parts of them that need to be healed, and get to a point where they truly love themselves, their inner voice gets really loud. And to me, it begins pointing to the areas of their life that need an overhaul, that they have control and they have an ability to choose. And finances is certainly a big part of that. So
true.
Again, this topic is very relevant for our audience. We're going to shift gears just a tiny bit, a quick segment I call Rapid Reel. Just some light, instinctive answers. No need to overthink. Whatever pops into your mind first. So the first one is a belief about money that you had to unlearn.
That the advice you're given is always in your own best interest.
Right. Next question is, do you have any perspective on the spiritual connection to money?
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, there's, I think, short and sweet. I'll keep these brief for rapid fire, but money is a spiritual phenomenon. It is the life force. It's the traded time, which is finite for all of us humans. Traded time and energy and attention. So be very careful. Those are actually the four currencies: time, energy, attention, and money. And we give our attention away. That's why we pay attention, right? Thank you for paying attention to this podcast today, everybody. But it is a currency, a spiritual currency as much as a tangible one, for sure. And that's my perspective on it. I don't know if there's maybe more to it than that, but.
No, but that's your perspective. I appreciate that. I had my own personal one, and I just like to check in with people and hear what others do. Again, I feel like it's all an individual belief. So
Do we have time to hear yours? I'd love to.
Yeah, I mean, I really have grown into a believer of an abundance mindset and money flowing much more easily. It's one of those things I've seen proof of in my life that I can't explain in it.
Yep.
And that, it's very much real in my life that the easier and the more I get roadblocks out of being who I truly am, and I
Yep.
simply am who I am, the ease comes with that, and that includes the flow of money. And I
So
don't
true.
mean it in all of a sudden somebody just showing up with a brand new car, although I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, to be honest. But it's
Yep.
just my needs just continuously are met, and I don't always know exactly how. And it starts with choosing to believe that I am taken care of. A
So
little bit
good.
of a mix. We have a great financial planner, and I do all of a lot of the things we're talking about today. And so it's not that I just let it, be ignored and wait for the
hmm
universe. However, I do think my role in that is much less hard work than I used to think.
So good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I
So
love that.
on to the next one. Was there a book or a movie that changed how you think about wealth, or at least it informed it?
Boy, there's a lot. So I'm
Mhm.
scrolling through my recent ones, but there's several books about money specifically. I'll say the book that caught my attention originally was something called The Bank on Yourself Revolution by Pamela Yellen. That was a big one related to some of the topics we've talked about today. And so I'd highly recommend check that bestseller book out. And I'd say another one that I gave a lot of attention to is The Great Money Bubble by David Stockman. He was a former comptroller of the US. So that was one to maybe check out as well. And then for business, we're not really talking about business today, but I think it relates. And it
Mhm.
actually has a lot to do with just thinking. His big idea in this book, which is called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, is a great
Great
book,
title.
great title. Great book on how to think and how to overcome big challenges you're facing, whether it's your business or just in general.
Incredible. You are naming the top things that I think that our collective world is desperate need of, and that is a big one. So I will list all of those books on our research page when we share the podcast. And now on to our last question in this segment, and just a little bit about you and your daily habits, and if there's anything that is kind of a consistent in your day to keep yourself grounded.
That's, I think, one thing that I feel has been an always evolving process. And
Mhm.
with a little 2-month old at home, it's all been thrown into the blender
That's
for a
right.
while. But getting up, putting something in my mind first that is positive, that isn't media driven, but is faith driven, focused on something that helps develop my faith and develop my spiritual awareness, helps get me reminding me what my reason on this planet is. Saying out loud your affirmations, I think, also is a key discipline that's been a lot of fun. I still do each day. So, and then physically working your body out, connecting with your family, smiling at the people who you live with. It's amazing how we don't smile at the people we live
Yes.
with so
Yes.
put some love into the people who are around you if you can. And then at the end of the day, say, did I give it my best? Did I launch the rocket? Did I hit my potential? Did I do the things that I was hoping to accomplish? Not what other people want from me, but did I do all I could, no more, no less, to help transform the world into a slightly better picture than it was when I woke up this morning? That's some of the questions I like to try to ask where possible. Always getting better at it and probably stumbling half the time, but that's
Of
what I do to
course.
try to keep myself grounded.
That's great. Well, congratulations on your new 2-month-old. Is
Oh,
is
thanks.
it is it a boy or a girl?
It's a girl, so we've got a 10-year-old girl and a 2-month-old. So we got a nice spread between ages,
Yeah.
but it's been a lot of fun. And older kiddo's been a great help too.
Oh, I was gonna ask. That's great. I feel like that's a perfect age, I feel like, for a new baby to come into her life, and I'm sure that
So true.
caregiver, love is just
Oh,
shining
yeah.
bright. Before we get to the final question, I can't believe we're already here. I could talk to you all day about this topic. But before we get to the final one, is there anything that we didn't touch on? And then also give a shout out of how folks can connect with you in your work. I will also share that context when I share the podcast.
Sure, yeah. I'd say the number one thing is if you can imagine the life you might have after we set up some of the strategies and tools we've talked about, the mindset shift, just imagine what it would feel like to open up your account statements and it's never lower, it's always higher, always having access to 5 figures, 6 figures of money for whatever you might need. If that's something that kind of resonated with you, I can help. That's what we specialize in. And our website, you can find us at kickstartwithmark.com. That's kickstartwithmark.com. We usually just give out our podcast, YouTube channels, a number of resources, and our special report, and a place where you can schedule a 15-minute meeting with me or one of my team members. That's kickstartwithmark.com is the best place to go to find all of our stuff, including our show.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. And our last question. We have listeners right now who may find themselves in their own messy middle. Some may even be in what they feel like is their rock bottom. When you look back on your life and think of the times when you found yourself in those places, what piece of advice do you wish would have come sooner?
Don't be afraid to hold the shop vac, even if you're under an elevator, pulling the worst stuff out of the earth.
Yeah.
There's a lesson underneath the broken elevators in all of our lives. And you can either become the victim of your circumstance or become victorious and know that, hey, there's something good here. And like you said, abundance mindset. There's even something good in the darkest, deepest place you might ever find yourself in life. If you can break through that ego that I have, that all of us probably have, and find what is it that we're truly meant to learn here. Boy, there's gold in them Dar hills, So go ahead and find it if you can look for it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for the kickstart today. I very much appreciated our conversation. As shared earlier, this conversation sits very strongly in our Let Your Inner Voice Lead part of our framework. And what that might look like for your financial picture includes the courage to just start rethinking how you build security and freedom. Until next time, stay messy, my friends. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Mark.
Before we wrap today, I want to invite you to be part of the Becoming is Messy community.
Messies, and
subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And if there's anything that resonates with you, please leave a review. Your feedback means the world to me, and it helps other people find this community. Follow me on social media. I'd love to hear your ideas for future topics, your questions, and stories from your own messy moments. And if you're feeling inspired, check out the Becoming is Messy shop, where you can grab a mug, a t-shirt, or something else that reminds you to embrace your messy magic every single day. A huge thank you to the incredible Wolves and Sheep for providing the music for Becoming is Messy. Check them out on your favorite music streaming platform. As we close out today's episode, remember this: messy is just another word for growth. So keep showing up, keep laughing, and keep making beautifully awkward progress. Until next time, stay messy, my friends.
Explore the real stories behind personal growth, transformation, and the winding paths that shape who we become. Each conversation connects in some way to the Unperfect Level Up framework, which is a model for becoming more fully ourselves. Today's episode connects to the Hello, Messies, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming is Messy, the podcast where we explore the real stories behind personal growth, transformation,